Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Almond Delights Reading Corner by way of Mount Bentley Christian Church. Come on in, saints, can'ts, ain'ts, and wants. Welcome to this week's read of Between Pews by yours truly, Mr. James Colwell. Please go over to Amazon.com and download your books today so you can read along with us. Come on in. Sit back here with us on the back pew as we find out what they doing up there between the pews. Let's enjoy this read. Are you ready? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Almond Delights Reading Corner, where this week we will continue our read of Between Pews, a novella by none other than Mr. James Colwell. I hope you guys, if you have your books, you're ready to read along. For those of you that will be catching the replay, get your books and let's go. So to recap what we read last week in chapters 3 and 4, we know that Rafik and honey, Mr. Edwin, they're getting a little more chummy. Rafik stayed the night. You know, they carried on they little do. I think last week we also realized, after Mount Bentley had burnt down and, Edwin was trying to gather up information about the church. It was some church ladies with some loose lips, honey, that almost sunk a ship. When the lady was talking about her son and that polar dog. Baby, that still just gives me all kind of anxiety and just all kind of Lord, the bestiality of it all. But we are here in chapters 5 and 6. But we know Miranda seems to bring all the boys to her yard and running things. So we're going to see where they are this week, okay? But I hope you guys are relaxed and you're ready to enjoy. Also, we're going to find out, hopefully, because, they were trying to gather information about the church, but Edwin got emails about the pastor, aka the thug pastor. So we're going to see what the thug pastor is all about. Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you to my armor bearers, honey, Miss Shadia and D Scales. Love y'all. We're going to get into chapter 5. Do you take this woman? Ring, ring, ring. The annoying ringer on my cell phone filled the air in the midst of the climax of a Rafik special. I said, I have to answer that. He snapped, not right now, you don't. I said, no, seriously, it may be important. He jumped straight up from the bed like a spoiled child. And what I'm doing isn't? I said, calm down. You're overreacting. He said, am I? See if you feel that way when all you have is that phone. I was looking to see who the call came from when that comment stopped me in my tracks. I said, was that some kind of childish threat? He responded, no. But when I give you time, you need to take full advantage of that time. I said, and I feel the same way. And don't talk to me like that, Rafik. He grabbed his clothes and started getting dressed and said, I don't need this. He headed for the door. I said, grow up. I don't know what's gotten into you, but I ain't with it. He slammed the door and left. I had no time for that drama. The phone message was from James Rhodes. I had emailed him 2.5 weeks before to see what he had to say about Mount Bentley. I called him back and agreed to meet with him at my office at the magazine on Monday at 10 a.m. I was very excited because I had no idea what to expect. But he sounds like a younger man over the phone. What could he possibly have to say that would top that poem story? Oh well, not in my attitude having non-boyfriend had stormed out. I had the rest of my Saturday to clean and work. It was only 9:30 a.m. I don't have a clue what got into him. That whole thing didn't make sense. But sometimes he doesn't. I am constantly asking myself, why do I do this? I don't even see Rafik enough to have a deal with I don't even see Rafik enough to have to deal with any drama. Once I started getting into my cleaning, I gave him the minimal amount of thoughts. Okay. Sunday morning, I decided to take my own car to church, and I told Miranda I would meet her there. Well, coming out of the building, I seen you know whose car in the parking lot. Needless to say, she never showed up for church. It made me a little irritated, and I knew that jealousy was rearing its ugly face. But while I was sitting there enjoying the service alone, I was really checking out Pastor Kareem, and it came to me where I knew him from. And it was not from a church conference or church anything. As I drove home, I tried to get my brother Teddy on the phone, which I could not. I left him a message. Teddy, please call me. I just remember where I remembered the pastor from. You are not going to believe it. As I entered the building, I noticed Rafik's car was still in the same spot. As I moved past Miranda's door, I could hear what just left me with an empty spot in my stomach. It sounded like they were breaking her couch into 2 pieces. In that moment, I realized the amount of feelings that I have invested in this boy, and I wanted to know, how in the hell did I let myself get here? Real quick, little disclaimer, there will be cussing, okay? I literally laid around for the rest of my Sunday, kind of feeling sorry for myself. When the morning came, I felt so much better. I was recharged and refocused. I was totally psyched about my interview in a few hours. I grabbed a little breakfast and headed into the office. My secretary buzzed me at 9:59 a.m. and when I answered, "Yes, ma'am," she answered, "Mr. James, I have Mr. James Rhodes to see you." I replied, "Go ahead, Taylor, and send him in." A few moments later, in the door walked an absolutely adorable, curly-haired fellow with deep brown eyes, a perfect lip line, very square shoulders, and very tapered waist, perfectly accentuated with a thin belt at the top of his navy trousers. The trousers were a perfect fit. They grazed his legs ever so lightly, and when he sat down, you could see how thick his thighs were. They were like a football player's thighs. He reached out and grabbed my hand for a handshake with one of the firmest grips I had ever experienced. And then out of his mouth came the sexiest voice ever. "Hey man, how you doing? I'm glad you're doing this. I can't wait to share my story. I think people will see this cat for what he really is." I said, "Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get started." I walked back around to the other side of my desk and told myself, "Don't stare. Don't stare." He wasted no time getting started. As I stood at the tip of the pulpit in my rented furnace with sleeves, I could feel my body temperature rising by the second. The organ player had just about taken the whole church into a comatose state with the playing of all the traditional selections. I laughed to myself, thinking about the fact that these folks are probably looking at me and thinking I've got wedding jitters or some form of silly nervous situation going on. Well, this was so far from the truth. The facts were, I was hot as hell and my drawers were too tight. I noticed I had bought the wrong size right as I was getting dressed, and my nuts were not paying the price. I have always prided myself on being one of the leaders of what I refer to as the big dick crew. But trust me, that day I would have been happy to be in with a little guys group. Just as I felt as though I was going to succumb to my current agony, I noticed Pastor Kareem taking his place in the pulpit. Shortly after that, organ player began to play the wedding march, and I watched as my future began to unfold right before my eyes. He paused for a slight second and then continued. "I don't want to sound like a punk, but all of this money and time that up until now I thought was wasted has started to make absolute sense." I looked down that aisle at my woman coming toward me in the most beautiful dress that I think I've ever seen. She almost didn't even look real, like a perfectly sculpted and dressed mannequin. Her pops was holding on to her arm with all the pride that I believe a man could contain without exploding from the top of his partially bald head. When the two of them reached the end of the aisle and he handed her off to me like we were in the Olympics of life, I noticed one tear forming in the corner of his right eye, and I knew that he noticed the one that I had in the same place. In that moment, he and I shared a head nod, in which he and I joined into an agreement of solidarity referencing the happiness of this beautiful creature that we now shared. It was like magic when my lady and I joined hands and approached the altar. Okay. All of the things that were causing my discomfort dissipated. We were 45 minutes behind schedule. There was an announcement that made that the pastor was in a last-minute council with the bride. I was wondering what in the hell the problem was. But now, all that was behind us. I was standing there with a plastic smile on my face. As we worked through the nuptials, my mind started to drift. That kind of stuff never holds my attention. I was smelling a scent that was vaguely familiar. Within seconds, it started to bug me that I could not place the smell and where it fit into my memory. My bride happened to break eye contact with the pastor and looked over at me and mouthed, "What's wrong?" In that moment, I could feel myself being consumed by a feeling of aggravation. She has told me repeatedly that my emotions tend to show on my face, and also that I'm an extremely jealous, distrusting male. I never deny those accusations because they are 100% true. As the pastor continued with the service, a certain amount of irritation had entered the room as I got a handle on the familiarity of the smell, which I figured out was coming from my bride. Say what? The smell was that of a male fragrance worn by Pastor Kareem. I had a memory recall of it. It is very hard not to notice it. The dude practically bathes in that stuff. And when he hugs folks after church, you do tend to take a large whiff. Well, on this day, it seems as though his scent must have found its way into my girl's gown. I was always uncomfortable with his need to hug on my woman, and today was no exception. I'm sorry, but I just didn't trust that dude, Bible or no Bible. The irritation of this whole situation was so evident in the body language of Mr. Rhodes, as if it had just happened last weekend. He continued on. I felt horrible that my mind was working that way, but something inside me wouldn't allow me to shake those ill feelings. As we approached the portion of the service that we would exchange our vows and our rings, Pastor Kareem came down from the pulpit and stood directly in front of us. Within seconds, I became extremely irritated. At this point, I was being faced with another familiar scent, and it did not take me long to figure out where I knew it from or the origin of the smell at that very moment. The smell that grabbed my attention was called Botanical Gardens, and it was a body wash used by my woman. It is unmistakable. I know it when I smell it, because every time I go down on my woman, it overcomes me and drives me crazy. It makes my shit as hard as a brick. Except for right then. I definitely did not get a hard on. I was getting furious. Every time the pastor spoke, the smell would burst onto the scene. I began to get a visual of how that smell ended up in his mouth, and it sent me into a rage. My God. As he was speaking, the sweet scent of my woman's vagina was filling the space where we stood, and I just literally felt myself and my anger burning on my insides. Seconds later, I felt one single tear drop from my eye and land on my left cheek. In that instance, I dropped my bride-to-be's hand and repositioned myself so that I was facing the pastor dead on. I then hauled off with all of the force that I could and punched Pastor Kareem dead in his mouth. And with that admittance, Mr. Rhodes sat back in his seat and crossed his arms with such satisfaction that it made me chuckle a little. He then continued. A sharp pain shot through my knuckles, but I didn't allow it to stop me. The force of the blow knocked that nigga over, which made him crash into all the pretty flower arrangements that took so long and cost so much. I immediately jumped on top of his ass and began to choke him as he struggled to get his breath and break free from my killer grip. It's my best move. Nobody could ever get out once I clapped down on that ass. I was determined not to let this dude go until his heart stopped beating. The church had a complete hush fall over the sanctuary when I first punched him, and then came the chaos. There were screams and shouts asking the Lord to forgive me for what I had done. Shortly after the confusion began, it was contained. The deacons and ushers came running from all directions to save this punk. My family members took the stance of battle. They didn't know why I had cold cocked the pastor, but they knew that I would have had to have a good reason to act out this way. As we were pulled apart, I realized my tux was drenched in beautiful scarlet streaks of blood. I was happy. That was a better gift than any toaster that anyone could have purchased. I was expecting to be thrown out of the church altogether, but instead, the deacons had everyone take their seats and had me, the bride-to-be, the pastor, and both sets of our parents meet in the pastor's office. I was thinking to myself, good. You need to know that y'all ain't fucking slick. Let's get this shit out in the open. Okay. It was a classic scene. Both of our mothers were a wreck. They both just kept crying. My mom was embarrassed, and I knew that's what her tears were all about. I had no time to play perfect on this day. My dad was just confused. My bride's mother was upset and crying about the fact that the wedding was now in shambles and an utter waste of money. Her and her husband's money. Her husband was furious and had a straight attitude. This was their home church, and this nickel slick son of a bitch was supposedly like family to them. My bride was a ball of nerves waiting on the fallout. I bet she was. Okay. As a few of the ushers scampered around Pastor Kareem with wet clothes, working diligently to get the bleeding to stop, that was coming from the gaping hole that I left in front of the good Reverend's mouth, my bride-to-be sat and cried heavily as both of our mothers began to try to console her. All emotions were running quite high. About 15 minutes passed, and the room was coming to somewhat a calm state. My father-in-law, to-be, stood in the center of the room and said, "What in the world was that? What would possess you to do this? I want to answer, young man, and it better be good." My father chimed in, "Yes, it had better be James Edward Rhodes Jr." The pastor actually had the nerve to lean back arrogantly in his chair, as if he was totally innocent and couldn't imagine why I socked him. I flopped onto that chair that sat directly across from the pastor's desk facing him, and I said, "Really, people? Do you really want to answer? Or would you rather squash this here and leave it as is?" In that moment, my bride-to-be blurts out, "What the hell? James, you're crazy. You have ruined my wedding, and you better explain." Then the pastor slipped in his 2 cents. "I sure want to know what would possess you to raise your hand to me, young man." I yelled, "For real? Y'all are off the chain. So let's get into it." They all leaned in like they were victims and the big bad wolf was being captured. It just pissed me off more that they were playing victim. I continued, "Well, first of all, I was in love with you, and you decided to treat me like a sucker. All the signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. You should consider yourself lucky that I don't hit women. But you claim to be so religious, so I let your God deal with you accordingly. And remember, karma is like you. It's a rotten bitch." Miles in the room dropped. She blurted out, "What? Don't you dare!" Her mother said, "Jimmy, don't you speak to her that way, and in the church." She placed her hand over her heart. I said, "Mrs. Jones, please, this isn't the time to fall out. Save that for Sunday service. All this fake church shit has gotten on my nerves. But that brings me to you, Pastor Kareem, the leader of this ridiculousness. The reason you are sitting there with teeth missing is because, as a man, I don't allow anyone to suck my woman's pussy but me. And nigga, you violated. Mr. Rhodes leaned back in his chair and continued to drop the story details that undeniably still sent pain straight to his soul. He continued, this punk never did deny the accusations. He just sat there quiet with a quiet look of disbelief on his face, along with everybody else in the room. He shifted his body in the chair and moved on with his story. Such bullshit. No one had an explanation. No one really knew what to say, I guess. I got up and looked at my parents and said, I'm done with this fucked up ass shit. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to try to fix it, and I don't want to see none of these fake motherfuckers no more. I started towards the door and my sneaky ass bride-to-be hollered, please don't do this. Please don't walk out on me. You said you would never walk out on me. I said, yeah, I did, but I didn't know you were fucking the pastor. She interrupted, no, I wasn't. Like that, let me explain. I replied, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear a thing from you. I'm really ready to choke your tonsils out. I'm done with you. And with that, I left that church and my parents followed behind. I ain't gonna lie to you. It hurt me. It hurt bad. It's been 3 years and I have seen my slutty ex-bride-to-be, but I still don't talk to her. What's the point? I'll never forgive her. And I'll never get married. I won't ever put myself in that position. I fuck bitches and keep it moving. He looked really relieved to share his truth, and I hope it was somehow therapeutic for him. I just felt so bad that he had to go through this. I stood up in my seat and extended my hand, which he accepted the handshake. I said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to go through that ordeal, and I'm even more glad that you thought enough to share it with me this morning. I promise you that I will handle this information with the utmost care and accuracy. He replied, I appreciate that. I know you're a really cool dude. I didn't expect you to be. I said, why is that, Mr. Rhodes? He said, there's part of it. Man called me James. We're about the same age. You ain't got to be all professional with me. We can just talk. I said, that's true, but not in here. I supervise most of these folks you see out there when you come in, so I have to keep the professionalism up to keep the respect level up where it should be. He said, oh shit, I ain't realized that. Well, now I get it. Hell, we should hang out sometime. I'd like to see you with your respect level down. We both laughed and I handed him a business card and wrote my cell phone number on it. I said, hit me on the cell and we can hang out. I'm pretty new here and always looking for new things to do. He said, cool. I'll talk to you soon, Mr. James. We chuckled again as he left my office. And scene. That is chapter 5. Don't go nowhere. I'm going to let you guys know where you at. Don't leave. Okay? Welcome to another episode of Almond Delights Reading Corner by way of Mount Bentley Christian Church. Come on in, saints, can'ts, ain'ts, and wants. Welcome to this week's read of Between Pews by yours truly, Mr. James Colwell. Please go over to Amazon.com and download your books today so you can read along with us. No, come on in. Sit back here with us on the back pew as we find out what they're doing up there between the pews. Let's enjoy this read. Are you ready? Listen. Ooh, that chapter had to get me together, honey. Ooh, Pastor Kareem don't care where he put his mouth at, honey. But we're going to get on to chapter 6 of Between Pews, honey. Because this is... Disclaimer, child, it's going to be cussing. Okay. Chapter 6. The ex-first lady of Mount Bentley. After looking at my gathered information, it really wasn't looking too good for Mount Bentley. Did anyone have anything really uplifting to say? It seemed to be old ill feelings and warnings of non-Christian behavior. It kind of gave me the willies. The next person that I interviewed was Pastor Kareem's ex-wife. I agreed to meet with her over Sunday brunch at the Grand Concourse in Station Square, over on Pittsburgh's South Side. I told Miranda that I would be skipping church service, and when I explained why, she begged me to let her go with me, but I wouldn't. It was a beautiful place, complete with chandeliers and plush classic patterned carpet throughout. It resembled an extended hotel lobby, very soothing and welcoming. I recognized the former Mrs. Bentley from pictures I found online on the church's information page. She was a very well put together woman of a 5'7" stature, a really sharp Halle Berry inspired haircut, a delicate frame, and tiny waist. We met right at the entrance of the restaurant. We exchanged a hug. She also recognized me from my Facebook page and my literary website. As we stood in the line to enter the exquisite brunch buffet, she comfortably stated, "You're even better looking in person." I smiled and replied, "I was thinking the same thing about you." We both laughed, and with that, the ice had been broken. From there, we spoke as if we had known each other for years and years. I set my recorder on the table and let the ex-Mrs. Bentley talk. She immediately touched on why her and Pastor Kareem couldn't make their marriage work, and her explanation was quite colorful. She began, "Let me say right from the start, I am no longer a first lady and never wanted to be one. Kareem and I hooked up in high school. 11th grade is when I started dating the supposed innocent pastor's son. That was a joke. There was nothing innocent about Kareem. Our first date was 3 days after we met. We went to a movie theater, and 10 minutes into the movie, he started rubbing my legs and carrying on. I'll never forget it. I had on a blue jean miniskirt and a fitted t-shirt with a matching jean jacket and white Reebok tennis shoes. We were in the back of the theater, and I always had a hard time telling him no. He continued his rubbing of my legs until about halfway through the film. It was driving me crazy. But I maintained my ladylike composure until he swiftly slid his finger in my underwear and swiped my vagina's opening. At that point, I lost it. Within the next 10 minutes, he exchanged his finger with his tongue. For the next 20 minutes, I squirmed and tried to stay quiet, as my moans were muffled by the screams of the actresses being slayed and the diabolical music playing in the movie. Kareem rolled his tongue and worked his fingers steadily without coming up for air. To this day, I have no idea what that movie we saw was all about. All I know is my innocence was left there in that theater that day, and I was okay with it. Kareem and I got married about 1.5 years after our high school graduation. We both had jobs and were enrolled in college locally. We were doing really well. Back in those days, Kareem's dad was still living and was a current pastor. Kareem and I were more than loyal members. Senior Pastor Bentley was an angel. He was very good to me and Kareem in the beginning of our marriage. His rules were, if you do the things that you need to do to secure a good life and help out around the church, you will live the life worthy of one of God's children. The two of us always lived by that, and he always made our way as easy as possible. We both graduated our college programs free of loans. We both drove new cars, and we lived in a very plush home. That was a wedding gift. I can definitely say that the building fund was used to build a life for us. Now, I don't believe that is the purpose of it, but I have no complaints. It was an absolute blessing to us. I got a bachelor's degree in accounting and got a position working for a large firm downtown, while Kareem also received a BA in business management but went into the ministry. He was the associate minister of Mount Bentley until old man Bentley got sick and passed on. It was such drama with his three siblings and Mrs. Bentley. You see, she is not Kareem's mother, and they are only half siblings. None of them were concerned with the church as long as old man Bentley was living. They hardly even visited him or the church. Kareem stayed by his dad's side all the way through to his last breath. A little bit of legal battle ensued, but nothing too outlandish. My law firm stepped in and squashed it. Everything that has to do with the church was willed to Kareem and only Kareem, so the fighting didn't last very long. My transition into being a first lady was a strange one. I was only 28 years old, which is quite young to take on such a role, and Kareem assuming the role of the head of the church. There were some very trying days in the beginning. Just the transition from an elderly pastor to a more youthful approach was an issue at times. The older members always got upset if you updated anything. They really hate change. And Kareem is a preacher who is very progressive. He puts it right out there. Sometimes the things that come out of his mouth would even shock me. Hell, sometimes the things that came out of his mouth were just downright out of order. The way he delivers the word is definitely not for everybody. My challenge came about when the power shift became evident. Once it was evident that Kareem was actually at the head of Mount Bentley, it didn't take long before bodies were being thrown at him with all their openings available for entry. At first it didn't bother me, and I didn't even address it. But within months, it got to be really disrespectful. Some of the female members that were basically after my husband literally stopped talking to me. I would show up for church and they would sometimes turn their heads and pretend that they didn't see me in the parking lot. If they would walk up on us together, the conversation would be, "Oh, hello, Pastor," and then, "Hi, First Lady." Let me tell you, it got old very fast. She stopped for a moment and chuckled. I cracked a smile to ensure her that I was attentive and I was following her intently. She continued. There was one member in particular that would just not let up. She was very bold in her approach, and I had really had it this Sunday in particular. She had called at about 5 minutes to midnight the night before with some emergency that got Kareem out of the bed and over to her house. She recrossed her legs to the other side and crossed her arms as she sat back in her chair. She had a smirk on her face reminiscent of that of a little girl on the playground when someone's lying. She took a breath and moved on. When my husband returned at 3:27 a.m., I just sat up in the middle of the bed and waited on the explanation that I was not going to be receptive to, no matter what. But what I got was arrogance and fatigue. I said, "Seriously, Kareem? Did you just think you were going to lay down and you don't need to say something to me? It's after 3 in the morning." He yelled, "What do you want me to say? You know what the job is and what it entails. So go ahead with all that. I ain't trying to hear that." I said, "The job? Oh, now you're an on-call doctor? I must have missed that. What do you do, specialize in bedside bullshitting?" He said, "You sound stupid with that old jealous shit. If I decide to be with someone else, I'll tell you to go away. As simple as that. I wouldn't be running around lying and sneaking. I ain't got time for all that." I just sat there in silence. I could not believe what I was hearing. The coldness of it just kind of cut my soul. And I really don't think I ever really recovered from the conversation that day. I never looked at him the same after that, and I felt of complete separation between us. But I still fought for my marriage. The next day in church, we had the normal excited to see pastor from this woman and the "oh, you're here to" greeting for me. During the service, I noticed her get up and go to the restroom. I followed her. When she came out of the stall, I didn't say a word. I grabbed her around her neck and slammed her into the wall and secured my grip on her and told her, "Let me tell you something. You are not fooling me, you lonely bitch. But I'm telling you today, back up off my husband or I got, or I'm going to do you dirty. You don't know me, and you've obviously got the wrong idea and picture of who I am. You think I'm nice and quiet, but I'm not that girl at all. There is nowhere to slip in on my marriage. I'm all the different women he craves, and all wrapped into one. I don't need no band behind me to pick me up any background notes. Do you understand? She called herself struggling to get loose from my grip. Her eyes were bulging out as if she couldn't believe that I yanked her. I let her go, and as she swiftly headed for the door, I said, "Excuse me, hon. One last thing. Don't think that being nasty will work either. You seem like the kind that will go that route. But you be wasting your time. I put that dick in every hole I got, so that won't grab his attention. I already got that covered too. Thanks. But no thanks. If you are planning to go that route, won't work. Sorry." She stormed out of the bathroom. I followed her back to her seat and leaned over her shoulder and whispered, "Cleanliness is next to godliness. Now go back and wash your hands, you evil dick-hungry tramp." Okay. Kareem got really upset with me, and then I noticed that she hadn't come back to the church after several weeks. I didn't care. I was glad to see her go. After that little incident, I never really trusted Kareem anymore, and I did ride him about his whereabouts. People said I was crazy and that I was destroying my marriage. We slowly grew further and further apart, but I still put 150% in to try to salvage what was left of the marriage. But it just seemed as though he couldn't stand me at times. It all came to a head this one Sunday morning. About halfway through the service, the member I had choked returned and sat down in the first seat next to the aisle in the front left pew as I sat in the same identical seat on the right. After about 30 minutes, as Kareem brought his sermon to a close, he told the congregation that he had some really important news that he wanted to share. He went on to say that he was going to believe in his bond of marriage to me, and that I would be receiving the divorce decree by hand delivery in my office the following day, and that the only Christian thing would be to just agree to terms and sign off, as to not make it hard on the church or its members. He bold. He went on to talk about how I wouldn't allow him to do the work that the Lord called him in the ministry for. I sat there in disbelief as he went on talking this craziness. He finally ended by saying that he thought it was for the best that I left the church until all of the proceedings were completed. But once the divorce was final, I would be more than welcome to rejoin Mount Bentley as a member of the congregation. I took my emotionless body and dragged it down the aisle and out of that front door and vowed to never step foot back in that church ever again. And I never did. To make a long story short, you should know that I didn't willingly agree to many of the stipulations of that divorce settlement that cut me out of everything and left me basically where I was when he and I dated. I got a very nice settlement, and basically, as long as Kareem makes money, I make money. And I get to check the books often to make sure my figures coincide with my monthly payments. Okay. As for my pew partner, you may know her. She is the new Mrs. Kareem Bentley. I was now sitting with my mouth hanging open in shock. Now sitting across from me with her eyebrows raised to the highest possible spot on her forehead was the ex-Mrs. Bentley, scorned and disgusted. Still. And I can't say I blame her. She went on to conclude her interview. Oh, and the good pastor thought he would shine in the courtroom by making reference to the fact that I cannot have children as his reason for his infidelity. But it was to no avail. The judge was a woman and did not buy into that foolishness at all. She actually got a little pissed, and I ended up very comfortable at the end of my divorce. To this day, I literally do not speak to my high school sweetheart, and I don't know if I ever will again. And scene. Listen, that was chapter 5 and 6 of Between Pews. Baby, the third pastor, Pastor Kareem, oh, he carries on. Pastor Reed don't care. And he had some nerve to have that hussy sit on the left side of the church while the missus sat on the right side of the church. He already had that planned out. That's why he was okay with her leaving the church. Because he knew she was going to come back eventually as the missus and not the mistress. I can't. Listen, I'm going to drop my link for those of you that want to come up and we can chit chat about what we just read in chapter 5 and 6. That was perfect timing. So we got about 15 minutes, if that. If you guys want to come up, you can hit the link. You don't have to show yourself. If you don't want to, just don't show nothing else. Okay, thank you. So you can hit the link. I'm going to go through, let me see. I appreciate y'all for coming on in. I hope y'all enjoyed this. This was, listen, I'm still in shock. Pastor Kareem don't care. And the fact that right before this man got married to this woman, you decided that you wanted to put your mouth somewhere where it wasn't supposed to be. And she decided to smell like the same body wash that she normally wash with at home. Girl, is you crazy? We have a guest. Let me. Hold on, child. Let me put my headphones on so I can hear you, honey. Oh, yes, ma'am. Hi, Miss Shadia. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm filtered right now because my twin is on my shoulder. But baby, these chapters is getting shorter and shorter, James.
That was actually long. That was 20 something pages. Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't. It was getting good. Oh my God.
So what do you think about Thug Pastor Kareem?
He a dirty bastard. A dirty bastard. But you know what? I'm glad that wife get her check, and that's right. You check them books and make sure that money right every month. That's what
okay.
Also, I came up here to say happy birthday, Jada.
Happy birthday.
That was it, and that was amazing. I know your facial expression, you was a little shy about reading it, and you looked a little shy. I kept putting them disclaimers out there, honey. I had you. I was reading along with you, like, oh boy.
Listen, the husband to be, I see you, Miguel. I'm coming to you. The husband to be, honey, had done took me out, but he did the right thing. You punched that man in his face at the altar, okay? At the altar.
He was supposed to. A good punch don't hurt nobody.
And not at all. Not when you doing what he did right before that woman walked down the aisle and he wanted to carry on with his mouthpiece. That ain't what we do.
No, that is not. But because I'm filtered and my twin on my shoulder, I'm going to say goodnight and get in this check. So I can put my twin to bed.
All right, girl. Thank you for jumping up here.
Goodbye.
Hey,
hi, Miguel.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Girl, it couldn't have been me. It couldn't have been me. It couldn't have been me in that last chapter. There ain't no way I would have said that and he'd have beat that.
Girl, listen.
I would have got up and beat him and her both.
I'm telling you, and she's talking about she drug herself down the aisle. Why are you going the opposite direction? No, ma'am. I need you to go up in the pulpit. Girl, and then lay at the altar.
Bust him in the eye.
Girl, yeah.
The other one got him in the mouth. You should have bust him in the eye.
Girl, I'm telling you, because I would have did the same thing. And then I would have drugged her down the aisle while she's sitting there.
Hey, we'd have been fighting all the way down that aisle.
I mean, why not? He embarrassed her. He really did embarrass her by telling the whole church. Before he even told her, he told the whole church.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what happened to telling the wife first instead of doing it before the church like that?
That's what I'm saying. And he decided to tell the whole church to embarrass her, and then try to tell the judge that because she couldn't have kids. That's why he wanted to do it.
That's the best one I've heard ever. So that gives you a right to be sleeping with somebody in the church house, huh? Don't that sound like Giselle and Jamal?
That's what somebody said. Do that sound like Pastor Jamal Bryant? Baby, listen, did James know what was going to happen before it even happened?
I don't know. Look.
I think he wrote that story. I think James wrote that story before it even happened. Did
Yeah,
they
it
read the
sure
book?
did. I was like, oh my god! And then the other part that got me was the pastor and the wife. The
Oh,
other how you just be having sex with this man's wife before they even met? It's probably that they was counseling her there.
and that's what I'm saying. And then you smell like her body wash, like botanical gardens. Like her husband knows what her husband to be knows what she smells like through and through. And then he know what the pastor smell like with this old thick behind cologne that he wearing.
Baby,
Ooh.
I would have did more than bust him in the mouth. Me and him would be rolling around in that church house for real.
Listen, well, he tried. He tried to. I see you, Jada. I'm gonna get to you, baby. But he tried. But the deacons and the ushers came and stopped him. But he knocked his teeth out. So hey,
Yeah,
he did the best. You won't be smiling at nobody with all 32, honey. You got the
I know
ones
that's
knocked out.
right.
You won't be smiling in another woman's
Yeah,
face until you get those fixed. Trust and
yeah.
believe.
But I really liked it and I enjoyed your facial expressions.
I can't help it because I'm just putting myself in these people's shoes. If that was me, baby, we would have had to fight. I'm
Baby,
sorry,
we'd
but
have been in there fighting in the bathroom too.
what was the point of her fighting back? You messing with my husband. What you gonna fight me back for?
No, that's what I'm talking. No, I'm talking about the wife.
That's what the wife didn't have to fight, baby. She yanked her up real quick. She choked her, honey. You them eyes bulging out. She saw her life flashing before her eyes, and then that was it. You get pretty and go sit back down in your seat, ma'am.
Hey, and pretend like I didn't do nothing.
Okay, and sit down and adjust your skirt and let it be done.
Yep. But okay, I'm gonna go back in the chat
Thank you,
and let
baby.
you talk to somebody else. All right, love you, sis.
Love you too.
All right.
Ooh, honey. Happy birthday to you. Happy
Hey,
birthday. Happy birthday, boo.
thank you, and thank those in the chat as well. Thank you, Almond Delights. I appreciate you.
Yes. So, what do you think,
Yeah,
honey? What do you think of these chapters?
listen, okay, these two chapters here, the last two, I was like, what is going on around here? First of all, I need to know what was up with these scents, which y'all have already discussed.
Oh,
Then
I'm
you have
telling you.
this, you say who?
No, I said I'm telling you.
Yeah. And then, okay, I understood where she said she get to be there to check the books to make sure that, what she getting is what she's supposed to get. That is all fine and dandy. But honey, there is no way that I just told this woman over here that she wasn't gonna have my man, she wasn't gonna take him and all this other stuff, and I could still sit right there in the same pew with her,
Ooh,
talking about she the new wife. And
baby,
I
when she
asked
showed up, I would have had to yank her.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. We would have threw down in that church. All thoughts would have been out the window.
I'm
I was
listen every last
as
bit of
soon
it.
as he
Lord,
announced.
forgive me.
Yes, as soon as he announced that they were getting a divorce, I'm pretty sure she would have been the first head I would have jumped. I would have just ran before they had me on the news. Okay, I don't want to be no
Hey, it would have been a
mess
race
with
around the church, honey, because we would have been running around like the pet, like the people do when they running around the church. You know what I'm saying? They trying to get that blessing. They running too. We would. Yeah, she would have. I would have had to. We running
Mm-mm.
full on sprint. We running a 10-4, 100. We running right now.
Yes, matter of fact, he would have got jumped a second time when they were in the courtroom and he tried to bring up that I couldn't have kids.
Oh
Like,
yes.
you bastard.
Yeah, that ain't have nothing to do with it. But like she said, thank God it was a woman judge, and know that that's not a reason for you to have, other relations with somebody other than your wife, and that's why you
Right.
wanted to have a divorce. Mm-mm.
And one of the things that she should have mentioned to him is what is between a husband and a wife is their own business before he went running and telling the church. I just
Come
couldn't
on
get enough.
now, but he
And
knew
I know,
better. He was the pastor.
yes. Oh my goodness. See, that's why I say I leave pastors on the same level as everybody else. They prone to make mistakes. They prone to
Yes,
do something wrong. You know what I'm saying? Just like we all are. Because, we're all supposed to be taking in the fact that he died for our sins. past, present, future. So I just, oh,
Look,
that
that
book
touched you a
was,
little bit in your
I, w-
spirit, didn't it?
it did. I never felt so close to a book where I wanted to be like, girl, you need me to do this for you. I don't
Yeah.
normally get ghetto, and I don't normally get ghetto like this, but can a sister tap on their head for you real quick? You keep your
Girl, come
sanity first, lady.
on.
I got you.
Yes,
So
come.
yeah,
Where's
I
my listen?
love
Where's
that
my
book.
armor bearer? Where's my armor bearer, girl? I need you
Right.
right now.
Where the armor bearer?
Hold this Bible real
Armor
quick.
bearer,
Lord,
you got
forgive me, cause I'm going in and going out, and then I'm gonna go to somebody else's church and lay on their altar, cause your altar is tainted right now.
thank you.
No, ma'am, not laying on that one where you
Oh
done
man.
probably slept with somebody on it.
Absolutely. So I am loving the book. I am loving all your reads, your facial expressions, your moments where you look over at the screen and be like, oh, I am loving it. And shout out to all of the mods and the Almond Delights, y'all mods. Y'all are hilarious. Of course, I love y'all. So,
Yes,
okay, that is it. I would have got on camera, but I am exhausted right now. And I had to tell
girl. Thank
people,
you for even
like,
coming
get some
up
live
here.
going on. I had to. I was like, I got to get up here and watch this show. I put it on my TV and I was watching from my phone and or typing from my phone. And, I had the other couple people like, no, I gotta get on Almond Delight. She reading a book tonight. I gotta do this.
Yes, come on now. Give me your undivided
So
attention, honey.
peace out to
Real
you, and
quick.
I'm gonna go.
Yes, thank you for coming
Absolutely,
up. And again, I hope you had
absolutely.
a
Love
happy
you dearly.
birthday. And I pray that God gives you the desires of your heart, honey, for yet another year.
Thank you. And matter of
Amen.
fact, I'm gonna take a picture of that candle so you know I've been using it. Okay.
Oh,
Amen.
listen.
All right. Bye.
Yes. Bye, girl. I'll see you later.
All right. Bye.
All right. Yes, honey. If anybody else want to come up, I'm gonna drop the link one more time. I appreciate y'all for coming up. Thank y'all for giving her birthday wishes and her birthday love in the chat. You know, I appreciate y'all for showing each other love. But while I wait on somebody else to come up here, let me do my good church announcements. If you've made it to this point of the video and you have not subscribed yet, why? Why? You made it to the end. So subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get all of my uploads. And when I go live, I don't just read, I do morning random uploads, a lot of times inspirational videos. Who's on the line? If you want to check out that playlist, I do that as well. If you would like to listen to this and other reads that I've done, because I read this book here, which is another James Colwell book, and then that's Mr. Timothy Blaine's book. I've also read those, so if you want to go check those out in the playlist, you can do so. And if you like to listen to podcast style on the go, you can go to my podcast at anchor.fm/almondbrown09, and you can listen to this and other shows on the replay podcast style, or if you want to go back and rewatch this video, do so. If you missed the first two reads of this, you can still go back so that way you can catch up. So next week when you come here, we'll be all caught up, and hopefully, listen, James will be letting us read his other books, so y'all tell him to let us read his other books. But we are also enjoying this book, and if you would like to purchase this book, if you still would like to purchase this book, you can go to my description bar. All of the links are down there for you to purchase this book, for you to subscribe to his channel if you have not. This book, and he's the author of 5 books, so you can go on there and purchase the rest of the books. They're also downloadable on Kindle. They're not Audible yet, but you can download them on Kindle. It's like $5.99 or something, in the books hard copy are about $14 to $15, which is there. When I tell you it's worth it, they're worth it. They are worth it. And for the people that have purchased the book and are reading along with me, thank you. And for the ones that have not continued on the read after we finish here, I thank you. Stop cheating. Don't read until we come back here next week. I know it's so tempting. I know it is, because we got to see what Thug Pastor Kareem is all about. But like I said, when y'all see James out there in the street, say, James, spill it, boy. can you let Almond Brown read the rest of your books? Now let her know before she finish with this one so she can order the rest of the books. So they can be here so we won't have to miss a week. But we might have, I think, we might have 2 more weeks, I think. 2 more weeks of reads before we are complete with this book. So hopefully he'll give us the answer by then. I know he said he watches the replay, but I thank everyone that comes over here. From Mr. Spillet Boy, aka Milan Trezor, you all know that you go watch him live on his backup channel, Milan Trezor. Yeah, don't cheat, Lagel. Don't cheat. Do not go cheat, ma'am. Thank you, Miss T. Tricia. But I appreciate everybody for joining me here tonight for another read at Almond Delights Reading Corner. Like I said, please check the description bar for any and everything. Your questions may be answered there. If you are an author or you know an author and you would like your book read here at Almond Delights Reading Corner, please email me at almondbrown09@gmail.com. That way we can get our correspondence going and I can order my book. And these videos are not sponsored. I paid for these books myself. Oh, look at God. Won't he do it? Oh, I'm going to go on Amazon tonight and order my other books. So y'all see, listen, we got a whole list. I don't know, about another 2 or 3 months of reads, honey. Another 2 or 3 months of reads for this Topaz. Listen, I'm so ready. So he said yes. Oh, I feel like a wife, honey. He said yes. He said yes. I stuck my head in 10 minutes ago. I knew you would be done. Yes. Thank you for joining us. So you guys, if you have not ordered the rest of your books, please go to Amazon so that way when we start on our next series of books, you guys will already have your books. I appreciate you guys for supporting him as well as supporting Almond Delights Reading Corner and all of my other videos. I appreciate you guys for the support. If you're just getting here, please go back to the beginning of the video. You won't be disappointed. I promise. So I'm going to say good night, you guys, and check me back here. Hopefully I can come back tomorrow for Who's on the Line. If you have not seen any of those videos, check out the playlist. You won't be disappointed either. So, but I love you guys with the love of God, and there is what? Nothing you can do about it. And stay from between them pews, honey. Stop being nasty. Thank you all for joining another episode of Almond Delights Reading Corner. I pray that you enjoyed yourself and you're relaxed in your mind, in your body, and in your spirit. Come back and join us again next week as we continue our reading. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Be blessed and enjoy your evening.